Welcome back, everybody, to the Pennsylvania in Berwind, and today we're going to be doing some work on the Paint Creek branch off the main line, just adjacent to where Pleasantville and the last couple of episodes have been taking place. We're not too far from there. The Paint Creek branch is a short branch. I think it's only about 1 or 2 miles, maybe 3 miles. And it basically just goes straight shot right down this ridge here that you're seeing on your screen to Curry Mills, which is where all of our lumber is going to be made, and this is the destination for a lot of the lumber, or excuse me, the wood that is going to be coming off of the Moss Creek branch. It will be coming down here, and I was talking to Bill M about some operations and stuff like that, and I'll get into that in a minute. But the first thing I want to talk about is what I'm doing on this branch. As I said, it's a short branch, and I was feeling pretty ambitious when I did this, and thought that I could do the whole thing. But the first thing that I wanted to do here is kind of the opposite of normally what I would be doing. I'm actually placing grid back down, and I was using the copy and paste tool to paste the grid down and also delete all of the old assets that were there. Any of the old trees, grasses, and that sort of thing, because the textures that were used here and the assets that I had used on this ridge were just very dated, and I didn't want to take the time to have to delete them one at a time, and I wasn't going to try to integrate them in. So the easiest thing to do for me to sort of refresh this area was to just send it right back to Gridland and then start working from there. And I end up doing a lot of terraforming through here as well. Here's the next shot. This is an overview of what the area looks like before I start converting it over to Gridland. But I did a lot of terraforming through here. I wanted to adjust where the creek flows and just sort of add some more depth to the scene. So when I had originally built the P&B, I didn't go for very deep scenes because I was kind of lazy, and I'm still kind of lazy. I don't want to really detail a lot of background stuff. But what it ended up resulting from that is these really shallow scenes where you could kind of see off of the baseboards and just sort of see adjacent baseboards and that sort of thing. So in an effort to hide other baseboards and to make the scenes feel a little bit deeper and the place actually feel like a real railroad, I've been slowly trying to add some depth to the scenes. And usually that just involves me creating some mountain ridges and putting some trees and grasses and stuff like that on the background. Not usually a big deal, but it's still sort of a thing to figure out, like what assets are best to use for background trees, which look good but also aren't gonna like totally tank your performance. So that's always something that I'm sort of trying to figure out. But that's what I'm doing here. I'm adding some, it's only one extra baseboard on either side of what I've got here. So as I had mentioned earlier, this is the Paint Creek branch, and what we're going to have here is a lumber mill. So all of our logs, they're going to be coming from our other industries on Moss Creek, as well as another industry by Grafton, will make their way over here either via Grafton or a yard transfer to Allegheny and then back over here. Bill M. had mentioned that he used to run this operation direct from Moss Creek. He would take a train from Moss Creek and bring it right down to this lumber mill, and then pick up the center beams and the wood chips that come from here and bring them over to Allegheny. So there's a couple different options for operations through here. I kind of like the idea of picking up all the lumber or the log loads from the Moss Creek branch, bringing them down to Allegheny, putting them into a new train, and then bringing that train up to Paint Creek. Doing all the switching, and then as the train goes back down to Allegheny, he could drop off some of the wood chips or some additional log cars, log loads at the Huntington paper spur. So there's a lot of room for operation here. I'm going to have to mess around with it and see what works best. I haven't really done any extensive operating sessions on here in a long time, so there's going to be some things that I'm going to have to work out. I'm sure I'm going to have to rebuild some of these areas a bit. So in terms of this lumberyard here, I didn't want to make something like super robust. I didn't want to make a really big factory. I kind of wanted it to feel small town country-ish, but still feel big enough to support all of the industries that require all of the lumber loads that are going to be coming out of here. So I was trying to find a happy medium where it was just big enough but not like overly oppressive in size. And something still within my grasp of being able to complete in a timely fashion. I was really hoping to complete this whole industry and this branch in this one episode. That was my original goal when I started this, and I just fell short of that pretty badly. But that's okay. I'm really happy with what we get accomplished here and the sort of beginnings of what this is going to look like. So it's sort of I guess a rough draft. We'll work in a lot of details as time moves on, maybe during live stream and whatever other videos. But I left it largely undetailed. This is sort of just getting it laid out, getting the idea out there, figuring out where the tracks are going to go, and making some modifications from there. And just kind of getting a general gist of the flow of the scene and the area and that sort of thing, without going overly overboard with buildings and piping and that sort of thing. The other thing is that I really don't know enough about lumber mills to really build them, I guess. Like, that kind of goes with all of my builds. I don't really know anything extensively about any of these industries. So largely my knowledge comes from Google and just looking at photos or going to Google Earth and trying to look at some satellite imagery of the real thing and kind of copy it the best I can. This, for some reason, was a little bit more challenging for me to find proper information on. Like, I found a lot of lumber mills, but they were a lot of, like, the classic logging railroad lumber mills, from the Pacific Northwest and stuff like that. So I don't know if there's maybe another prototype that one of you guys knows more, in detail than I do that you could point me towards, like a website or, a website or a book or something like that, where I can look at some other pictures of what one of these facilities actually looks like and get some more details in there. But I mean, basically my whole mentality here was logs and wood. I mean, that's the product that it creates, so I wanted to make sure that I put a lot of related things like that, but also in terms of how this whole operation would be laid out and functioning with track and warehouses and that sort of thing. This is just my best guess, and as long as it functions enough for the P&B, then I guess I'm happy with it. I kind of wish I looked a little bit more for lumber mill assets before building this. I looked up I think wood mill or just mill or something like that, a really basic term, and I didn't get some of the buildings that I should have used. I realized later on that JR had some decent lumber yard assets with like stacks of lumber and sheds and stuff like that. I think at some point I put one down and I'm like, oh, I could have made use of this. That sucks. Because I end up doing a lot of that manually, putting down some of these sheds and then lining up like stacks of wood, and then luckily enough I built some of this on the grid. So what I did was I turned off randomly rotate new objects, so when I placed the lumber loads down, they at least would all be facing the same direction. I put them in place, and then I could use the copy and paste tool to replicate that to a point with making a few minor detail changes and that sort of thing, so that it had some difference to them. So that kind of helped a bit. Again, another benefit of building on the grid, I guess, with this particular game. So this part of the lumber mill, this is sort of the north end. I'm not even sure which compass direction we are. I'm going to call it the north end. On the original P&B, it ended in the woods with a runaround track of maybe a couple 100 feet long, and it was just meant to be like an escape for any train that was there doing a delivery or a pickup and needed to run around the train quick and get out of there. So I wanted to make sure that I included that because that was sort of a real characteristic thing, but I kind of thought it would be cool to put it right next to the creek, so that the creek wraps back around and we've got the train tracks sort of paralleling the creek one last time before the scene basically ends. I guess I thought I would be working on that right now, but I guess I'm moving along to something else. But anyway, that was the idea with that. I guess we're going to come back to that spot and scenic it in a few moments here. I did jump around a lot when building this because, as I've been saying lately, my brain has been in a little bit of a creative funk, so I kind of have just been building willy-nilly, like whatever I see, I'm just going to kind of go after. But actually, that's a good segue for this next for my next little piece of commentary here. I'm considering in the future changing my video format. So this is P&B episode number 39. I'm thinking episode 40 is going to be another route tour or world tour or whatever you want to call it, and I'll do a full overview of the whole map from end to end, kind of like I did early on when I first started doing YouTubing and introducing this route. It's probably one of my highest viewed videos. I think there's like 60,000 views on it or something like that right now. But it's so old and dated at this point, so it'd be nice to go back over things and take a look at some of the newer areas, and anybody who's new to the channel here might have a little bit of it would give some context to the layout and geography of the map itself. So that'll be episode 40. What I'm thinking after that, and I don't know if I'll do this for my other video series or just the P&B, but I'm considering doing something along the lines of more of an overview after I'm done with the build. So not doing so much of this time-lapsey build stuff on camera. I'll do that off camera. And the way that I'm kind of picturing the show to be formatted, it would kind of open up with some cinematics. I'll talk a little bit about what the project is, and then go into like surveyor mode or something like that, and then just show off a few of the key things that I had come up with, some of the details, and some of the techniques that I've used, and then close it out with some more cinematics and a little bit of commentary again on the rest of the route. So maybe it would be shorter videos, but and you're not going to see the actual process, but you'll see more of the result of it. And I'd like to try this just for two reasons. One is that a lot of my building lately has been really, I don't even know what the word would be, nuanced, or like, you know, if you look at my Port of LA live streams, like that kind of stuff. Like I'm getting down into like this detail-y stuff that I'm not sure how great of a video it would make. It doesn't really seem to make for great live streams, because I understand it's pretty boring to watch me like place road markings, or to do, you know, place like a million, you're gonna see right here, like a million of these like lumber loads and then straighten them out and do that kind of thing. That's not really great like storytelling like for a film. So I'm thinking about doing a lot of that off camera, and then that way you guys will get a little bit more of a overview of what the completed product will look like, or the completed scene will look like, and it'll give me a chance to spend more time on that really detailed, nuancy stuff that I really like, without having the pressure of trying to make an interesting video at the same time. So I don't know if it's going to work or if anybody's going to like it, but you know, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now, so I figure maybe it's time to shake things up a little bit. Let's try a different format on some of these episodes and see how it works out. And then that'll also give me a good chance to spend some time on really good cinematics, is another benefit of that. I haven't really spent too much time playing around with cinematics. I know I do like a couple flyovers at the end and stuff like that, but I think that there's more that I can do, including like before and after wipes, kind of like how I did in episode 8 of the Dayton and Troy, where I showed the whole scene just roughly laid out, and then I did a transition where basically everything kind of popped into existence. So I could do things like that, and also do some other different types of flyovers and spins and things like that. Things that I would like to maybe spend a little bit more time doing, but right now, because it takes so much time to do the build and then to edit the video, I don't really spend a whole lot of time on the cinematics. I kind of just do a couple flyovers and then call it a day. So I think this new format might be beneficial to show off some scenes a little bit more, and also show off more completed scenes. So I don't know, I'm gonna try it out. We'll see how it goes. I might only do one episode like that, and then just call it quits on it, because it might be more work for me than I'm anticipating. But we'll see how that goes. Okay, so continuing along with this build. Okay, so now we're back on the tail end here. Again, jumping around for whatever reason. Like I had said, I liked the idea of this being right up against the edge of the creek, and but I also wanted it to feel like it's not very, like it's functional, but it's not used very often. So of course I've got to make things a little bit grown in, bury the track a little tiny bit, and then bring in some shrubs and things like that to really force this idea that maybe this is more of just a storage track rather than an escape track. Because the main difference also with this build compared to the original one that Bill M had done is that I put a few more tracks before you even enter into the facility itself. So there's a small yard there, which you saw me lay out in the beginning of the episode. So that gives a little bit more flexibility in terms of switching. Maybe they built that later on. Maybe that's a more modern addition, and this was the old, you know, the original escape track for when the facility was smaller. That's kind of a cool idea for some history there, I think. With the idea of that now it's just used for some storage for excess. You know, maybe it's these, what is this, wood chip cars, or center beam cars, or the log spine cars, whatever those are called. So I kind of like the idea of that, and then the way that it looks. I always love, obviously you guys know I love overgrown track, and these sort of like, I don't know what you would call it, brushy, dead type scenes. Like this is the stuff that I really like doing, and creekside track and stuff like that really appeals to me for some reason. I enjoy it even though it is really tedious. And again, that goes to, you know, like I was saying earlier, like a lot of the tedious stuff that I do. I'm sure nobody wants to sit here watching me place rocks in this creek bed and like lay down trees and stuff like that. I don't know, maybe you guys do, I have no idea. Everybody's got their own thing that they like, and everybody's got their own thing that they don't like. So, again, just experimenting with that. But yeah, so I mean, I guess this could even open up some potential that if one day we ever wanted to extend the Paint Creek branch. Wow, I'm having a hard time talking today. That's like the 10th time I've messed up. If we've ever wanted to extend this branch further down the line and create another industry or something like that, there is that option there. So I kind of like that if this route ever indeed gets finished 100% and we want to expand down it further than what we've already got laid out, that opens up that possibility, which I think is really cool. Let's see, what are we working on here? So I kind of felt like this area off to the right-hand side needed something. I didn't want to just fill it in with trees and forest, but I'm also getting tired of making towns and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna lie, I went over to the Eagle River route and kind of looked at what Scratchy had done in some areas to fill in some sort of, negative space around the tracks. And I'm not going to say that I copied him, because it's not a copy, but it definitely heavily inspired this area in terms of just placing down a couple of houses here. And again, I didn't end up detailing anything. I just wanted to get some things laid out and get the idea out there, and I'm going to come back and detail it later. But Eagle River has been very inspirational for most of these last couple of videos, because it's all logging stuff and, lumber and that sort of thing. So, not to mention Scratchy's just like super talented. Like if you don't have any of his routes, you should definitely go check them out, because they're incredible. They're just really well detailed and structured, and the flow is really good. Like, I think everybody should check them out. Anyway, so yeah, I've been going to that route quite a bit, get some inspiration. Wanted to do some work on the track down here, I guess the main part of the track, but I never ended up getting to that. I was too busy trying to make this lumber industry work and get it completed that I never finished any of the creek side scenes. But again, that's something that I could do in another video, or off camera, or during the live stream. So now for this little bit of negative space over here next to the yard that I put in. I guess you can consider that a yard. Okay, I'm all over the place. I thought there was going to be more clips of that. I did put a little farm over there just to be across the street from these houses, because that just sort of felt natural, and I think it looks all right. Being out in rural Pennsylvania, that might be the idea is, there's some spare land, or somebody owns a little bit of extra property and they just grow some crops. I'm not super thrilled about it. I might shake it up and do something else, or maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody else has a better suggestion for something to put there. But that was the idea with that, was to just put in a small plot of farmland. And it also keeps the yard opened up for some, scenic flyovers and that sort of thing, where you're not looking through trees and brush and stuff like that, that you'll actually be able to see the trains that are parked there and be able to see that. So again, over here trying to fill in some of this negative space, wanted to put in some wood chip piles, put in a couple little detail things. I just kind of threw them down without going into too much detail with the details. But I also wasn't really sure what else to put there, or what the layout of this would look like. I mean, there would be like piles of wood chips, and I'm just picturing bulldozers kind of pushing them around to pile them up and move them. I don't know. There's got to be other stuff that I can put there. It's going to take me a little bit to develop the idea and do enough research that finally it flows naturally. So the last clip that we're looking at here is just putting down a few final details, some cross bucks, and then we'll put down a couple of switch stands as well, just to wrap things up with some of the easier detail stuff that I can throw in really quickly. Again, using these great TBS cross bucks, and then the switch stands that I use are always the New Century switch stands, which are just awesome. They've been on the download station for a long time, and they're incredible. But that's going to do it for my commentary for this one. We got a couple cinematics at the end here coming up that I hope you guys stick around for. I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.